All right. Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to talk about quads, and as usual I'm going to break down the anatomy first because I believe that if you understand how your body works, how your muscles work, how they move, you can start training better. You can start creating the patterns and the correct motions in your brain because you understand how the muscles attach, how they originate, and so it's better. And then at the end of the video I'm going to show you then which exercises you can do if you want to activate a little bit more the different heads, right? So quads, it's a short abbreviation for quadriceps. That is the scientific name for this muscle, and it's called in this way because it's going to be made of 4 different heads. So as the bicep has 2 heads, triceps has 3 heads, the quadriceps is going to have 4 heads. And so I'm going to break down each one for you now, and I'm going to just explain the motion and what is what's going to be the functionality of the muscles. I'm going to just bring a little bit closer here so that you can see the leg. All right, you can see the muscles. Now the 4 muscles, the 4 heads are going to be 3, are going to be called vasti, right? So it's going to be Vastus Medialis right here in the inner part, Vastus Intermedius deep inside, you can't see it from outside because it's very deep in the middle, and then Vastus Lateralis in the side, right? Now the 4th one is going to instead be a little bit closer up here, right? It's the one that you can see up here, and it's called the Rectus Femoris. Now, why it's important distinguishing between the 3 vasti and then the Rectus Femoris? Because they're going to be doing a different function. The 3 vasti are going to be a monoarticular muscle. So that means that they're going to only act on the knee joint, all right? Instead, the Rectus Femoris is going to be a biarticular muscle, like the bicep, like the long head of the bicep. So they're going to act on both the knee, but also on the hip joint. So it's 2 joints at once. And now let's start talking about the medius, the Vastus Medialis. Is the inner portion, right, of the muscle that you can find up here in your inner thigh. It's going to originate from pretty much the middle portion of the femur, right, pretty deep. It's going to run downwards like this, right? And then the fibers are going to merge with the other fibers from the other muscles, heads, and they're going to create this big tendon, and then it's going to touch down here in the tibial tuberosity. All right. Now the Vastus Intermedius instead is going to be deeper, as I said, in the center. So it's going to run from about 1/3 proximal of the femur. It's going to originate. It's going to just run downwards, and then it's going to, as I said before, merge with the other fibers, and it's going to then continue with the tendon. Finally, the the Vastus Lateralis is going to be the muscle right here, right? Actually, a lot of people seem to think that the vastus is all this portion. It's not that large, so it's not all this portion. It's just this one. All this other part is going to be other muscles, right, and other fascia that is going to then round down and is going to attach it right here, right? So the Vastus Lateralis is actually just this portion right here. And that said, it's going to originate from 1/3 proximally of the femur laterally, so it's going to run like this, and then it's going to merge with the other fibers. It's going to create the tendon, and then the tendon is going to touch in the tibia. Finally, the Rectus Femoris instead is going to originate from up here, from the anterior inferior iliac spine, right? So from the hip bone. From right here, it's going to just run downwards like this, like this, like this, like this, and then it's going to merge with the other fibers into the tendon, into the tibia. All right, and so that is the anatomy of the muscles. Now, why it's important? Because of the fact that the vasti, when they're going to contract, they're going to very simply bring this part of the tibia closer to the femur. So they're going to simply extend the knee, right? So that's the main function of the quadriceps muscle. And the vasti are gonna, so medialis, intermedius, and lateralis are gonna only do this. So they're gonna only extend the knee. Instead, the rectus femoralis, other than extending the knee, is also going to participate in hip flexion. So that means doing this, right? So this is neutral hip, right? And this is hip flexion. So this muscle is going to contribute in both motions. So hip flexion and knee extension. And yeah, that's it. So that's the anatomy, guys. Now, what is important knowing these different heads, how they originate and how they work? Because depending on the position of your leg, so depending if the hip especially is neutral, right? If the femur is neutral, or if it's externally rotated or internally rotated, all right? You're gonna be able to activate a little bit differently the heads, the different heads. So you can see, for example, here, right? If you're gonna activate more the medial head, you're gonna need to rotate your leg outwards, right? So to externally rotate the femur, like this. So if you then extend your knee like this, so with your femur externally rotated, you're gonna be activating a little bit more the vastus medialis. Instead, if you extend your knee in a neutral position, or maybe in an internally rotated position, like this one, for example, all right, you're gonna be activating a little bit more the vastus lateralis. Now, it's very important, one of the most important things about this muscle is the impact that it has on the knee and on the kneecap. So on the bone right here that you can find, that you can actually move, and that this bone is actually moving while you are flexing and extending the knee. And why is that? Because you can see that the vastus medialis is actually very low, very close to the bone, right? So this is the bone right here, and you can see the vastus medialis, it's almost at the side of it. Instead, the vastus lateralis is going to be a little bit further away. In this case, you can see mine ends right here, right? Here is already the tendon, starts the tendon, and the kneecap is here. So these two heads are going to be responsible of the different orientation of the kneecap, because if the vastus medialis is too strong compared to the vastus lateralis, it's gonna bring the kneecap closer to it, like this. So it's gonna rotate the kneecap closer to it, and so the kneecap is not gonna be centralized, it's gonna be closer to the medial part, like this, all right? And so when you're gonna flex and extend your knee, the kneecap is not gonna move properly, all right? But it's gonna be closer to the medial part, and so that might cause you some problems. The same goes for the other part. So if the vastus lateralis is too strong compared to the vastus medialis, it's gonna pull all the kneecap closer to the lateral portion, and so when you're gonna flex and extend the knee, this kneecap is not gonna move properly. Now, this is a huge thing, because many people have this imbalance. So their vastus lateralis is a lot stronger than their vastus medialis. So they end up having the kneecap not moving properly when they move their leg. And so in the long term, they're gonna end up maybe having some problems, some pain, and some problems on the knee joint. So it's very important training the vastus medialis, especially, right? It's one of the most important muscles. And because of the fact that the vastus medialis is so close as well to the kneecap, it's also a very good and very important stabilizer of the knee, all right? So if you go to the knee, like here, you have your knee straight, all right? And there are some forces that want to move your knee like this, all right? So in valgus or in varus, like this, all right? If you have the vastus medialis strong, it's gonna stabilize more the knee, and so it's less likely that you're gonna end up having an injury, all right? So because you're gonna have this muscle holding a little bit more the knee, and so stabilizing more, and so it's better, all right? Of course, a very huge trauma, for example, when you're playing football especially, is gonna end up causing you ligaments problems, but this muscle is very important in being an active stabilizer of the knee joint, all right? Now, that being said, how can you train them? As I said before, for if you want to differentiate between vastus medialis and lateralis, you just need to rotate the leg. So if you want to train more the vastus medialis, the only thing you have to do is just place your leg externally rotated, so your foot facing, your toes facing outwards like this, and then extend and flex your knee like this, right? So imagine you are sitting in a leg extension machine, all right? Suppose that is the motion that you're gonna do. So having your leg externally rotated, right? Keeping it externally rotated as you perform the extension of the knee. This is gonna activate a little bit more the vastus medialis over the other muscles, and so you're gonna be able to train it more. If you don't want to use machines, that's perfect. There are other ways to train the vastus medialis. The first one is with an elastic band. So you're gonna place an elastic band behind you, in front of you, all right? So the elastic band is gonna pull your knee into flexion, and then you have to actively extend your knee, activating your muscles, and then the trick is actually keeping your knee extended. Because when you keep your knee extended, that's when the vastus medialis is gonna activate more to stabilize the knee. And so, because the elastic band wants you to lose the tension and to break into knee flexion, while you're keeping it in knee extension, is gonna activate more. So for example, all the exercises where you have an elastic band right here, right? Then you try to extend, reset, and as well, you can also do it with a little bit of external rotation if you want to. So like this, extend, hold, and then down. Extend, hold, and down, all right? So imagine an elastic band. I don't have it right now, but you just need to put it somewhere, put it behind your leg, right? It's gonna pull your knee into flexion, and then you have to fight against the elastic band to pull it and to extend the knee. Normally, in a body weight movement, for example squats, we tend to say people to have their toes open, so not the toes facing the front, but the toes facing slightly upwards. And this is not just because of the mechanical better movement of the hips down here of the femur, right? But this is also because you can see here your knees going a little bit out, and then when you go up, your knees are brought closer once again. So this little motion is towards the inner part, is going to activate a little bit more the vastus medialis. But it's just a slight reactivation. If you want to activate more this muscle, you need to do it with the elastic band. And then that's it, because normally like 99% of times, you're not going to need to specifically train the vastus lateralis. You're not going to need to, right? You're going to just need to, like anytime you do squats, lunges, split squats, anything, you're going to already be using a lot of the lateral vastus. So normally the one that requires more specific training is the vastus medialis. And now for the vastus intermedius, all right, every time you're going to extend the knee, you're going to activate it, so that's okay. You know, there are no issues involving the vastus intermedius. The rectus femoralis as well. Remember that the rectus femoralis is a biarticular muscle, so it's going to also operate on the hip joint. So anytime you're flexing your hip, you're going to activate in this muscle. And normally, what happens many times is that people, when they do abs, all right, and they use their legs, for example, like these kicks or exercises like this, or maybe, you know, doing stuff like this, all right, they're going to end up activating and using a lot of the hip flexors. So the rectus femoralis, the how it's called, the iliacus, yeah, the iliacus muscle, I don't remember the name right now, iliopsoas. So it's gonna normally use abs plus the hip flexors, right? So normally you're gonna end up activating and using the rectus femoris a lot more times than what you think you're doing. So anytime, as I said, you're doing abs like this, or a hold, anything, you're going to be activating this hip flexor muscle, so the rectus femoralis. Plus, of course, remember, every time you're doing squats, any movement that is going to extend your knee, you're going to activate it. So normally, as well, the rectus femoralis, that doesn't really require a specific training. Normally it's just, you know, you're gonna be able to train it in a lot of different ways to activate it, so you don't need to actively do it. And yeah, that's it. So I hope that with this video we're able to learn more about your muscles, how they work, and this way, you know, start training a little bit more, knowing what you're doing and how your muscles work, and so training smarter. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and see ya. Bye bye.